It's a 2024-2025 Boston Celtics season preview. We are here with Will Weir. It is his second time on the dime, and this time he is a champion. Give it up.
There it is, y'all. Just so you know. Just so you know. What's up,
Just in
boys? Happy to
case
be
you
here.
forgot, that hurts. As a Knicks fan, that hurts my soul. But I got to
Oh,
give you
we'll talk
props,
about the
man.
Knicks, man. Can't
Yeah, we
wait.
will. We
Can't
will
wait.
talk about the Knicks. We will definitely talk about the Knicks. But congratulations, man. Let everybody know where people can follow you, the podcast that you're on, all that good stuff.
Yeah, man. So Green with the Envy is the podcast. We're part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. It is me and my best friend, Greg Menakis. We have been covering the team now going into year 5, which is kind of crazy. Started in the bubble, been building up that audience. So at Green Envy Pod is where you can find us on all social medias. Come check out our YouTube. We're usually recording about 2-3 times a week. My co-host just had a baby a couple months ago, so we're still trying to figure out what this new norm is. And, we're trying to figure out what that definitive schedule is, but 2 to 3 times a week, come lock in with us, any type of Celtics content, and we'll hit on some other stuff just as we feel like it. That's the beauty of when you have a podcast. You can kind of hop around as you see fit and talk about whatever is, happening in the moment. So we like to have some fun. So yeah, come check us out if you guys like what you hear.
Yeah, they're a great time, actually. And they follow the Celtics, breaking news, everything. So if you're a Celtics fan, it's a great podcast to follow. I'm not a Celtics fan. I hate everything Boston sports, but as somebody who I like Will. I like Will as a human being. And I see what they post, and I follow them because obviously, even though I don't like the Celtics, I like people.
Hey, that's all good, man.
People. There we go. All right. Well, I got to congratulate you because your favorite team just won the championship, and deservedly so. One of the best seasons in NBA history. Walk me through that. What was that like? At any time, were you nervous? Did you know it was going to happen? I never felt this before.
Were you worried? Like
I mean, honestly, I've got some Knicks fans in my life, so I've ripped on them a couple times, especially where Celtics and Knicks are playing. That I'm so happy you guys get to see what it's like to watch a ring.
Oh my God.
It's a beautiful thing. You guys get to experience what that will be like. So please tune in that night, But no, man, it was last year was kind of crazy, right? I mean, obviously, we're heading into another training camp. Media day for the Celtics was last week because they're in Abu Dhabi to play the Nuggets, but all is popping up all day on my feed. Like 1 year ago was one of the last big Woj bombs that we got, was the Drew Holiday trade. And that, of course, there was the Kristaps Porzingis trade a few months before that. So last year was kind of a wild ride of seeing how this would all mesh together. And for the most part, it went just about as perfectly as you could have ever anticipated. Even factoring in some of the Porzingis health concerns, you got 57 games out of him. That's hey, if you can get 55 games out of KP in the regular season, that's a success, right? That's what we're looking for. And then to be set up for the postseason, and obviously they got a little bit of injury luck, but it wasn't like they weren't without their own. Like KP went down in the first game of the postseason and really didn't play again until game 1, and then he was out for the rest of the NBA Finals. So, it's a little bit of a balance, but this team is really unique. They feel really bought in. They feel really selfless, very humble. And I think, it's unfortunate, I think, especially for a guy like Jayson Tatum, where, he's the superstar. He is. Like, I know people will sit here and debate whether he's the 4th best, 5th best, whatever. He's no higher than maybe 4, but he's no lower than 8, right? That's a damn good player to have. And the thing is, you look at all of his numbers, like he sacrificed in all the right places where he added playmaking, subtracted scoring, added rebounding, especially in the postseason when you have no KP. He went from 8 rebounds to basically 10 rebounds a game, 9.7. And so, with this team, it was really cool to watch them ebb and flow and try to figure it out. The ascent, if you will, of Derek White becoming an almost all-star, but everyone's favorite role player around the league. And so, to be a little bit cocky, for the most part, it did kind of feel like the Celtics were going to do it. Like, it really did. Like, all year long, the one thing that me and my co-host kept saying is I think we might have a Jokic problem. But who doesn't, for the most part, except for the Timberwolves? Yeah. Well, and we'll see what that looks like now. If they traded Karl-Anthony Towns, we'll see what that looks like. That's a confusing part of that trade. But that was the one thing we were really looking at was, other than the Nuggets, because they execute so well late and Jokic just has an answer for everything, that's the one team that I wasn't going to say 100% we're winning the championship if we're healthy or, mildly healthy, depending on the matchup. And then we never had to find that out because the Nuggets never made it. So it did really feel like it was the Celtics year. And, the thing is that people want to say that it was a weak run or whatever. Yeah, they got some breaks, no doubt about it. Like I said, we were without KP2. But the thing is, this is kind of a culmination, right, of the last 5, 6, 7 years building up to it. So that's the part that always kind of irked me a little bit, is as if this wasn't earned, right? I sat here and watched every single minute of the Jays go through all of this, and they're just entering their peak years now, yet they've been criticized as if they've been ringless for 12 years of an NBA career. And so for me, I feel like that was really cool to get that validation of, listen, the Jays have now done it, and now they can actually play relaxed, which is scary to think of what that might be this year.
Piggybacking off what you just said about how you watched over the years the conference runs and all that, I saw somebody, I can't remember, but they tweeted out after the championship run, they were like, they didn't feel like jubilation or excitement. They felt more relief. It was like, okay, nothing wrong happened. Like, did you have that type of similar feeling where you're like, you were worried for like the next shoe to drop, like when KP went down or something? Were you just, because wonky stuff happens in the playoffs, right, during the season, or were you just like, yes, we finally did it?
It's a good question, and there's definitely part of it that was. I think there was a little less jubilation than I was expecting because of that relief aspect, right?
Yeah,
because it was, and especially when you add in some of the injuries along the way, I'm just like, damn, there's gonna be another bullet point. People are gonna act like this team can't do this with, But luckily they basically went undefeated. I mean, they lost one game in 3 out of the 4 series and swept the other series, which ironically was the one team, the Pacers, that was healthy. They fully swept, and then everyone else they had one loss with. But so it was definitely a little bit of relief over jubilation. Like, definitely when you win a championship, it's hard not to just be incredibly happy. And I think especially watching someone like Jaylen Brown, who now it's weird to see that it's kind of flipped, that Tatum's getting more of the criticism, whereas that's always been Jaylen Brown's roles. He's not good enough as a 2. He can't dribble with his left hand. And then it was like, by the end of the playoff run, it was like, man, is Jaylen Brown the Celtics' best player? It's like, no, he's not. There's a reason that he could do the things that he could do, which is some Jayson Tatum, but he should still get his props, So, like, I know for me in that run, when he got specifically the Eastern Conference Finals trophy, that was one of the most hype moments for me in that entire playoffs, was seeing Jaylen Brown get that. Conference NBA Finals a little less so, because I knew what it meant for Jayson Tatum, and so that took away from that counterbalance a little bit. But it because of all of the run up, and I think because of all the injuries and such, there definitely was that relief aspect, which did make it a unique title for sure.
All right, so now we need to talk about the world's greatest matchup, which is Jayson Tatum versus the United States of America and Steve Kerr. What the hell? What happened? Are you buying into the narrative that Steve Kerr is trying to ruin the Celtics? Do you think Jayson Tatum deserved the treatment he got? I just want to hear your general thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, on the Steve Kerr trying to ruin the Celtics, I mean, the part for me is like, listen, what's he trying to ruin? The Warriors ain't making it back to the finals.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so I don't really see that aspect as quite as much, unless he's really, really going galaxy brain here and he's thinking, man, that's 2 finals in 3 years. This team's primed to maybe go on a run. We're the dynasty of the, of since 2010 or whatever. Like, yeah, I don't know. That's a bit of a stretch. I will say I didn't understand a lot of it. The one thing that I will say, and this is not to give Kerr credit, but I think this is out, is that Tatum was really struggling shooting the ball. So that's the one legitimate out that there is that if he was shooting the ball, then it was already crazy to me, because I think specifically when you look at the Serbian bronze medal or semifinal game, like, that made no sense to me, where after we got to halftime, it was like, okay, very clearly we're missing length, we're missing switchability, we're getting killed on the boards. I think you have a guy who just guarded 1 through 5 in the NBA finals and can play make and can do all of those things that I feel like we're missing in this game, and still refuses to go to it. That was the one that ultimately probably drove me the most insane, because then it was just about being stubborn. And, we saw that with Embiid's playing time throughout. And that was the one game Embiid, I think he gets a little overhyped for how well he played in that game. He let up a ton of offensive rebounds and had a couple of wild turnovers, but yet that was his best game. So I do want to give him that credit. But yeah, it was really hard to explain that Team USA run for Jayson Tatum other than the shooting. That was the one part where it was like, all right, well, I guess I can, have Tatum off the court. But for the lengths of time that he was not out there, and then he would be, in first the gold medal game, he was the first guy off the bench. So the use of it was just all over the place. I didn't think Steve Kerr's coaching was great throughout the postseason. Not the postseason, but throughout the Olympic tournament. But ultimately got bailed out just by the level of talent the U.S. still has versus the world. But what I will say is, I believe it's going to be, I think it's November 6th. Tune in, Celtics Warriors in the Garden. That's going to be, I mean, believe me, our mentions are constantly blown up of how Celtics fans feel.
Yeah.
Listen, it's just the older I get, the less I can get that type of vitriol, like kind of like burned up in me. But there are some fans in Boston that don't feel the same way. And so, Kerr's going to hear it that night. It's going to be pretty electric in there.
I think that the Serbia game was one of the times, looking on the timeline, I saw both Celtics and Warriors fans were like, see what we told you about Kerr? See?
The rare alignment, yeah.
The very rare alignment. Do you feel like with what happened, Tatum will use it as motivation going into the season? Even also, I guess also Jaylen Brown being left off the team will also use their motivation. Even though, and also side note, Derek White and Drew Holiday were also on the team and they played. So it wasn't a against the Celtics thing. I feel like a lot of people are missing that point, which was like also weird. But to the Jays, do you feel like they'll use what happened this summer as motivation moving forward?
So I'll answer Jaylen first because it's very easy. It's yes. That dude loves taking motivations. I mean, he still got the tweet from his high school teacher that said he's going to be in Cobb County Jail in 5 years. Like he posts that seemingly yearly. You know what I mean? Like Jaylen Brown, and clearly he's coming out with his own shoe brand right now, 741 Performance. Like he's trying to make a statement against Nike. Like definitely Jaylen Brown, whether he admits to it or not, is definitely using it as motivation. I think for Tatum, I think probably to a certain extent because Tatum is a very thoughtful guy. Like he was talking the other day in a story with or an interview with Jared Greenberg for NBA TV about how he's chasing Larry Bird. Like Tatum's very aware of his surroundings. He knows his place and where he is and what he aspires to be. And he's been groomed for this his whole life. This is something we talk about a lot. He's a very manicured superstar. And I think that's when we get into that whole, like, kind of, in my opinion, bullshit aura conversation, like that's where it comes from a little bit, is because Tatum's been the number 1, 2, 3 recruit since he was 14, 15 years old. He went to Duke as the top guy. He was a number 3 pick. He was immediately in the starting lineup the first night of his NBA career and ended that season in Game 7, dunking on one of his idols in LeBron James. Like this guy has been bred for that moment in every single aspect, from interviews to his clothing to, I mean, this guy has an entourage he's constantly with that's filming, that's training with him, and so I think he definitely will use it as a form of motivation. I don't think it's going to be his main thing. I think his legacy is now becoming his main motivation. But something cool that came out of media day was guys like Al Horford were the ones saying that this is motivation because they got like the Jays back, basically. Like we didn't like seeing the way the media and the way everything was portrayed in our guys, because what you're doing to them is then, to your point, taking away from what Derek White and Drew Holiday did. So, Al already made a statement. He's like, I'm motivated by what Team USA did to my teammates to go ahead and win for them. And that also, I think, speaks to the culture and the unity of what this team is bringing back from last year.
Any chance Lonnie Walker makes the team? He was the only thing you guys did.
Man, that's a hell of a pivot right there. What a pivot that was.
The Celtics are bringing everybody back, essentially.
They brought everybody back.
They're bringing everybody back.
Our big Exhibit 10 signing of the year in Lonnie Walker.
Usually we're talking all season acquisition. It's just kind of like, all right, you signed this big free agent. You did this. The Celtics like, we'll take a flyer on Lonnie Walker.
The Lonnie Walker signing was funny just because everybody was like putting out like somebody needs to sign him. He's really good. He's a volume, like he can score off the bench. Then the Celtics signing showed up on the timeline. People were like, "No, not them, not."
This is not fair.
There had to be one of 29 other teams that would have made that sign. It's really confusing, man. I don't understand. We talked about this a few weeks ago on our podcast. Like, I don't get why Lonnie Walker didn't go sign. Like, a lot of the Exhibit 10 deals you see are like someone like a Marcus Morris who's on the tail end, and it's like we're only, especially with all the CBA restrictions, like, we're going to do like a training camp deal because only if we really think we're going to need him are we going to pay him like a vet minimum, which is going to be a little bit more than like a younger guy, obviously. And like Lonnie Walker's still pretty young. I think he's like 25 years old, 26 years old. Like he's still a young guy. And, like you said, he can get buckets. So I'm surprised that that's all that he has. He's been in the facilities working from even before training camp started. So it seems like he's motivated. He's saying all the right things. Will he make the team? It's an interesting question. I think if he does, it's going to say a lot about the Celtics' most recent draft pick in Baylor Scheierman and the pick the year before in Jordan Walsh, because like you said, the Celtics are bringing him back. So if you really think about just kind of their depth chart and there's the only spot that's really open is there was a fluctuating O'Shea Brissett spot that every couple of games he got some run or was used as kind of a curveball for Joe Mazzulla. And so I think if Baylor Scheierman and or Jordan Walsh show enough promise, that spot probably goes to them. And I think even though I like Lonnie Walker, I think I would probably angle for it going to them only because as we look at all of these cap restrictions that are coming up, the Celtics need some cheaper talent. They're going to have to offload somebody somewhere at some point. So you got to see if these guys can play. And even if it's going to be in these limited 9th, 10th man minutes, like you kind of want to see some real NBA results, not just they look good in the G League, which by the way, Celtics G League team lost in the finals last year. So, trying to hype them up as well too, but
organization killing it.
Whole organization, man. We try to bring home different championships. But I think if Lonnie Walker's on this team, that means that we definitely don't think that they're ready to contribute this year, which I think could be fine. But I think when you look at the tax bill staring them in the face, this year is going to be tough, but next year is really when it gets insane. And you're going to, even if you can find a little bit of money here and there, that will say a lot. So we'll see how training camp goes. I do think there's a role for Lonnie Walker. I would like for him to make the team. I don't want to see him go to a team like, say, the Knicks, who all of a sudden now could use a little bit more depth. Like I think that's a place that he could end up. So I'd like to see him make the team, but I think I would be surprised if him, Baylor Scheierman, and Jordan Walsh all make the team. That would be very surprising to me. I think it's kind of an either or type of situation.
Speaking about Baylor Scheierman, you guys drafted him. What are your thoughts on him after the draft and like after he played in summer league?
Well, I don't know if you guys saw, he's added apparently like 15 pounds since summer league. He got this, it's funny, he got this whole like crew cut and chain set up when he was doing media day. And so like there was pictures going around where he's like straight out of Creighton right into Dorchester. Like looks like a dude you would find at the local pub.
Yeah.
So it was really funny looking at that. And so apparently he is bulking up. That's part of the game plan with him. I liked what I saw from Baylor Scheierman in summer league. I don't watch a ton of college basketball, so I wasn't very familiar with him until the Celtics drafted him. He's certainly a confident 3-point shooter. We'll see what that percentage will look like. He can play make a little bit. He's got size. He's an older guy though. He's like, I think he's 23 years old already or something to that effect, So he is a little bit older. I don't really have a lot of high expectations. I do think there's a chance that he does play for all the reasons that I just mentioned about the Celtics and Mazzulla do kind of have to figure out sooner rather than later, do these young guys on cheap contracts, can they actually contribute if we need to move some of the guys that are going to be a staple in our 8-man rotation? It's my co-host Greg has said this before, and it feels lazy, but it does feel kind of true. Like just like the white guy on white guy comparison, he feels a little Joe Ingles-ish, right? Like that kind of feels like a little bit of that vibe. He's a lefty and a white guy, so it feels like we're just carbon copying, with what our eyes are telling us. Maybe they're deceiving us a bit, but that feels kind of like where his game would be at. I think his defense is probably the biggest question, but that's also, an area where the Celtics can kind of get away with having a guy that can't defend because we have 4 to 5, 6, 4 other guys at all times are going to be on the court that are very, very high level defenders. So I think you can always get away. That's kind of my personal rules. You can get away with one bad defender, one below average to bad defender, and still get away with being a successful team. It's when you have 2, that's when you start to get in trouble especially with the top teams in the league.
Yeah.
So for Baylor Scheierman, like I said, I think if he does crack the rotation, he's going to be in kind of that 9th man, that O'Shea Brissett minute role. Very different player, but that minute role, either him, Jordan Walsh, or Lonnie Walker, I think are going to find themselves in that role. It's just a question of who at this point. That's what we're going to find out with training camp in the preseason.
All right, so let's move on to the actual season itself. Jaylen and Jayson, obviously they reached the pinnacle, right? Like what else can you do? But as a Celtics fan, is there something you want to see them improve on as a duo, maybe individually, where it's like, maybe I wish Jayson did this, or maybe I wish Jaylen did a little more of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for Tatum, I'll start with him. The biggest thing is, I'm a little worried. I'm lightly worried about his shot just coming off of the postseason and then the Olympics, like we talked about. We'll see.
Yeah.
It feels worse than it is because when you look back, he shot basically 38% of high volume from 3 last year. And so that's really good, right? For your star player who's handling the ball, who's taking all different types of shots, like that's really good. The 28%, which is what it dropped to in the postseason. And then I don't know if you guys noticed, he didn't hit a single jump shot in any Team USA game.
Not one.
Not one. So that's a little terrifying. It was tough to watch. It looked like mentally there was some stuff going on, but supposedly he's been working on it since then. And so we'll see. So I'm not ready to panic on that yet, but one thing that I think for me would really help with him is just I've always wanted him to shoot a little less volume of threes and a little bit more mid-range and going to the basket. More so, I think a little bit of mid-range now because he goes to the basket quite a bit now. Like he's bulked up. He has really wide shoulders. He can get to the lane in different ways. So I think he does a really good job of that. I think you saw that's why even with him shooting so poorly from 3, he was still so effective is because he can do so many other things, right? He's not a one-trick pony. He's not just a shooter. He can do so many other things and contribute in so many different ways. And so for me, I think it's the shot selection on his threes. And it's some of the pull-up threes, some of the off-the-dribble threes that I think you can kind of feel they're coming and they don't need to come unless he's really in a groove and he's feeling it. And so I think if he can cut down on 1 or 2 of those per game, that's really the only thing I can ask for. Like Tatum's superstar ability is that he is above average to great in everything. He's probably not the best at any one single skill set across all of the superstars in the league, but find me an area of his game that he's average or below average. And it's I dare anyone to do it. Like you can't find it. That's his super ability is that he can do everything at an above average to great level. So I think it's just efficiency in knowing, not even efficiency, just shot selection. That's really what I would look at from Jayson Tatum. And with Jaylen, man, I've already capped out his ceiling 3-4 years in a row, and he keeps finding a new way to do something. Yeah. So I'm just excited to be surprised about what it is. I honestly don't know what it's going to be. I think last year, from a decision making and from a leadership standpoint, and certainly defensively, he talked about he wanted to be that was really important for him, was to be in the all defensive conversation. He didn't make it, but he did get several votes. And
he's always been really good at defense. He's always been good.
Exactly. And I think, one of the things that he used to struggle with was when he was off ball, he'd get back cut quite a bit. So that was something that he's shored up over the last couple of years. And so, I've put ceilings on Jaylen the last couple seasons. I'm just excited to see what it is. I don't have a good answer for that because I don't know what's coming next. I mean, he's training underwater with a basketball, so maybe I don't know, maybe he's gonna turn the garden into an aquatic center and we'll find something new. I don't know, man, but there is some level of evolution coming from Jaylen Brown. Just don't know what it is, and I'm excited to find out, like you guys are. Well, maybe you guys aren't excited, but I'm excited for it.
I'm not excited at all.
I'm not excited.
Just be honest, as a Knicks fan.
Are you both Knicks fans?
He's a Nets fan.
I'm a Nets fan.
Oh God,
yeah,
damn, man.
Oh yeah. We're fine.
God, I feel, man.
Yeah,
all right, well, good luck, man. Good luck on the season. That's all I got. All I got.
Hey, we're just trying to tank peacefully.
We're just trying to tank. Leave us alone.
Yeah.
What's the tanking slogan for the Brooklyn Nets this year?
What was it? Fail for flag.
In the pooper for Cooper.
In the Hooper for Cooper. There we go.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them, but that's happening. But then I see people are like, "Oh man, Ben Simmons is gonna come back." I'm like, "Please stop! I don't want to. It's not the year. I don't want to hear you by nobody. Don't try. We have Killian Hayes. Like, let's calm down."
Real quick, wouldn't that be the worst case scenario if somehow?
Oh my God, be terrible.
Ben Simmons flips back to. I mean, let's be real. Ben Simmons had a ton of. Ben Simmons was really.
He was phenomenal, man.
Right. So what if he flips back for just 1 year, ruins in the pooper for Cooper, and then goes right back to the Ben Simmons that we've known for the last 3 years? That's the worst case scenario for the
very Nets thing to happen.
Very Nets. It feels like it's trending that way from what I've been seeing and what everybody's saying, and also it's a contract year.
Right, exactly. So it's the stars might align for Ben Simmons to make you guys just good enough to get the 6th pick.
I mean, trade him right away. Trade him. Somebody else. Knicks, you want him? But let's going back to the Celtics. Speaking about your front line, do you have any concerns because Porzingis might be coming off injury? Al Horford is the ageless wonder. Is it just gonna be Luke Cornette time? Like throughout the course of the season? Like I just
little Cornette contest.
I like Luke Cornette time. Luke Cornette's fun, man. He's fun.
He's gonna be. I was saying this the other day. He's gonna be the next Scal, basically, in Celtics media. Like he's immediately going to be a Celtics media darling whenever he's done. I don't even know how much longer he's going to be on the Celtics, but that will definitively happen. I'm already calling that now.
Yeah.
But to your question about the front, I mean, so obviously KP's out until they say December, January. I'm just going to book it like middle of January. That's kind of my best case is what I'm looking at. And so, once he comes back, it's all about will him and Horford be healthy in the playoffs. Like that's if the two of them are healthy in the playoffs and everyone else has a really good track record of being healthy from the Celtics core, let's ride. I'm ready to face anybody this league has to offer. There's not going to be a single team out there that scares us. But, leading up to get through the regular season, this might surprise you. I feel great. I feel totally great about our front court rotation to get through the regular season with Luke Cornett, with Xavier Tillman, and with Neemias Queta. And all of them just provide different angles. Like Luke is incredibly stable and reliable. You know exactly what you're going to get. You're getting very solid play from him. Tillman gives you a little bit of a curveball, right? Like I think, and it was funny. I predicted the Celtics this would be a good guy for the Celtics go get last year. And so I was pumped when they brought him in because this is what we're missing since Grant Williams left, is like kind of a ground bound small ball five that can kind of mix it up and get big. And so, and I think Tillman didn't have quite the transition that I was expecting. It was a little bit rockier, but he had his moment, right? He had his moment in the finals against the Mavericks. He was useful against that series. And so I think he's going to be used in select matchups where you can, in the regular season, it's not all on Al Horford to guard Joel Embiid or to guard Nikola Jokic. Like you can use Xavier Tillman in those moments. You can go small ball five with Xavier Tillman. He's going to give you a different look that I think will be valuable. And then you have Neemias Queta, who's kind of this high upside, little bit of a wild card where I think a lot of Celtics fans look at it like, can he be Rob Williams light? Right? Like with his athleticism and his impact roaming around the rim, being the vertical spacing threat that, especially without KP, doesn't really exist on this team. He is kind of the lone vertical threat in that sense, although Luke Cornett's 7'2", so it's still some verticality there that you can utilize. But the athleticism he brings, it's going to be interesting because I think if he can find a certain level of consistency, he's a guy that I could envision potentially beyond this year having an impact in what the Celtics look like with all those cap restrictions, which are going to be looming over every conversation. But I think in the regular season, the mix of those three guys, Al playing selectively, he's already every back-to-back, just rule him out. We've done it for 2 years. That ain't going to change. Maybe even a few other, I think I'm pretty big on like building minutes in while a player is still playing, meaning Al Horford, instead of him playing 25 minutes a game, if he's playing 20 minutes because we got 5 extra minutes from Xavier Tillman, that goes a long way when you get to, April, May, and June. And the Celtics expect to play 100 games, 100 plus games this upcoming season. And so I feel really good about that front court rotation. Check back in with me maybe, mid-February, and let's see where the health and of KP is and where the age of Al Horford is. I may have a different answer. But for now, going into the regular season, I'm totally, if we could just bench KP until the postseason and we know we're getting just like the KP that we need, let's do that. Like we're going to be fine. We're going to win 55-ish games with what we have right now, even without KP. But KP is the guy that, to be clear, takes the Celtics from right there with everybody that's very good to a truly great team and puts them in another stratosphere.
So that begs the question about your backcourt, right? But I just feel like with this team and just the Celtics in general, we're talking about this before the show. It's like, what do we even talk about with the Celtics, man? It's like they won the championship. They were dominant all year. They bring everybody back. You have Derek White and Drew Holiday, who are in the Olympics, who are probably the best backcourt in the NBA, defensively in the NBA, or just in general, they could be. I mean, you could make a case. So for me, it's just kind of like, my next question to you is like, are there going to be larger roles for Peyton Pritchard and Sam Hauser? Like we've reached that point where it's like, I just feel like with the Celtics, like you guys are so sure about everything and everything's so set in stone that like, what can I possibly ask you at this point? Right.
You're totally right, and this just feels like how sometimes when we're trying to talk about the team, which is why we're like Neemias Queta. What about that upside, man? That's kind of where we're at. You see that lob he had, or it's we're trying to figure out certain things to talk about. But specifically with Pritchard and Hauser, I think this goes back to what I was trying to say about like kind of buying rest in the moment. Like that's where I think Pritchard and Hauser come in as well. Is if their development continues trending trending upward, which, Sam Hauser is kind of the shining star of Celtics development projects because he was a guy that was undrafted, was in the G League, and now is becoming, one of the biggest sharpshooters across the NBA and holds up way better on defense. People want to give him credit for, still want to keep going at him. Ask Luka how that went, in the NBA finals. Like, Sam can hold up. Sam can hold his own. Now, obviously, there's limitations to that, but I think for him and Pritchard, like, if they can provide in-game relief for a few minutes at a time on certain games, and I don't know if you guys heard the quote Jaylen Brown said, which was a nice little stray to the Detroit Pistons, where it's, on some nights like that, maybe we run our offense through Sam Hauser and Peyton Pritchard, but and I don't think he meant that, though, as disrespectful as it came out, which it was incredibly disrespectful. But I think within that, it speaks to, like, can Sam get 3 extra minutes that come off JT or JB's plate? Can Pritchard handle the ball responsibilities or ball duties that, come off Derek White or Drew Holiday's plate just for a little bit here and there in games, and have that add up over time so that they're at their freshest when we get to the moments that matter, versus the teams where our distinct advantage is our top 6 is more overwhelming than your top 6. Our power of our, top end talent depth, which I think is the true depth that matters in the NBA, is who are your top 5 to 7. Like, it's great when you have, guys that are 6 through 11 that are all NBA players, but if they're all just low level role players, what does that actually mean? Like, I'm going to be throwing out there 4 all-star level players at all times, and I have 6 of them. So, you know what I mean? So that's what's really going to win out. So with Pritchard and Hauser, I think for Hauser, it's just maintaining your league status as one of the true sharpshooters that just create gravity and awareness from the defense every single time you're on the court. And then maybe can you add in a pump fake where you can take one dribble in and make a read, or can you get to the cup a little bit more and continue to grow on defense? For Peyton Pritchard, man, can you keep hitting buzzer beaters? Like, is that
he just keeps launching from half court,
like a lefty out of the bullpen, right? Like a lefty specialist just coming in. For Peyton Pritchard, it's just more about remaining even keeled. He got off to a slow start last year, and we talked about this a little bit in one of our training camp previews. I think he got the contract extension last year, and now he's very secure in, both financially and where he is on this team. And so, the slow start dragged his numbers down a little bit last year, but because Mazzulla stayed with him, you saw the benefit of that as it went on throughout the year. So I think for him, it's just about getting off to a better start, which, I don't really have much concern for him being able to.
Speaking of Mazzulla, is there any changes you want to see from him offensively, defensively? Maybe like he watches the town like 5 times a week instead of 4. Like, I don't. Again, we don't know, because we said it before. Like, your team is just set. Everything went the right way. Like, Mazzulla did a hell of a job coaching you guys to the final. So, is there anything you want to see differently, or is it just
ran circles around Jason Kidd? By the way, I need to put that.
Ran circles. Yeah.
I mean, it's funny. Joe's in a really good spot. Boston media has always been a really tough place for players and coaches alike. And it's funny because Joe got so much heat after year 1. And I'll raise my hand as I was partially guilty of that. I kind of retracted it once I had a second to get out of the heat of the season and be like, damn, you know what? Joe Mazzulla was in one of the toughest positions you can be in. Like, I'm 35 years old. Joe Mazzulla is 35 years old. He's the head coach of the Boston Celtics. And he found out one night that he was going from basically the 4th assistant to the 2nd assistant, which was a really cool upgrade, to all of a sudden being the head coach the night before training camp with all the Ime Udoka stuff. And he had to kind of figure out everything on the fly. And, I think it took year 1 of him trying to get used to the job. And I've said for a while, the worst thing that happened to him was, I think they went like 21-4 to start his first year as a head coach. And they had, I don't know if it was still the all-time offensive record, because those records are broken every 3 seconds, it feels like. But they had this historic offense, and it was like, man, look at this. Mazzulla came right into a perfectly made situation. He can coach great. And then they got into some ups and downs, and, and all of a sudden, they went to Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals, and like it still was, you can't say in Boston anything's a success other than winning championships, but that's still a hell of a first year for a head coach when you factor in everything to it. And I think last year you got to see him break out his personality, which for better or worse is a little bit insane. And so
Just a little.
He's a crazy person. Like I don't know if you guys are Seinfeld fans. There's a character from like the early years. It's like Crazy Joe Davola. So we always just reference Crazy Joe Mazzulla. Every time we hear what he's doing, whether they're playing wiffle ball because he watched a Red Sox game and he cut up a bunch of tape about what they can learn, or he went to Paris and they're doing baton tosses and in practice with speed walking. And the guy loves to make everything uncomfortable. So that's he loves living in this very weird place that no one else enjoys being in. He loves being in that. And so from an on-court perspective, I want to see him now that you've got that championship. This is kind of alluded to this with Jaylen and Jayson. The weight's off your shoulder. You just won the championship. Like, you kind of have free reign to do what you want. You can experiment a little bit more. And so I'm curious to see Joe Mazzulla put the Celtics in positions that we have to then go, what is he doing? What's happening here? And I don't know what that's going to look like, but I guarantee you he's going to make some decisions that maybe don't make sense in the moment, but it's because he's trying to make them uncomfortable and make them figure out things on the fly. He's a big believer in kind of that soccer philosophy of, this was like the timeout issue that happened as well, where it's like, I get what you're doing, but you still have them and you can use them occasionally, which he did a better job last year of mixing that up with the kind of that balance. But I don't know what it's going to look like, but I'm excited to see what he does, whether it's like inverted zones or, he's got somebody else trying to be the playmaker. I don't know what it's going to look like for a Joe Mazzulla team, but I know it's going to make me uncomfortable. It's going to make him happy that I'm uncomfortable. and then by the end of the season, hopefully we're going to figure out which one's actually.
Yeah. All right. Before you go and we get a season prediction, I want to play a game of Real Fugazi. This is just simply, I'm going to name an Eastern Conference team. You're going to tell me whether or not they are for real, as in threats to knock off the Celtics. I'm not saying they are going to, but threats, or Fugazi is like, you're not even worried about them. You ready to do this?
Let's do it.
All right. Milwaukee Bucks, for real or Fugazi?
Fugazi. Big time Fugazi. Yeah, I mean, the Bucks, respect to Giannis, but this is an older team. And, we talked about the age of Al Horford. Most of what I was saying about Al Horford can apply to Brook Lopez. Biggest difference, he's maybe their third best player. And I say third best player because who should be their third best player is Chris Middleton, who hasn't been Chris Middleton outside of finally getting to look like Chris Middleton in the playoffs, and then immediately had 2 ankle surgeries.
Yeah.
So, because all last year I was saying, I don't want to write off the Bucks because I think even with all of their issues from switching head coaches to fitting Dame in, if Middleton gets back to the Middleton that he was, that team can still be scary. And unfortunately, he was great. He looked great in that Pacers series, but Dame was hurt. Giannis was out. And, and then he immediately has more surgeries. I'm like, I don't know. I can't rely on Chris Middleton. And so now Brook Lopez is my third best player. Dame's another year older. I am sure they're going to look a little bit better. And they did a pretty good job on the fringes with, Gary Trent Jr. and, I'm trying to think. Taurean Prince, I like that signing for them. But when you talk about trying to compete with the Celtics and the top end depth, and even, if we're not including Peyton Pritchard and Sam Hauser in top end depth, that's still depth, like really good depth that we're talking about there. I just don't see it. And so with all respect to Giannis, he's the one thing that I would look at and be like, you got to mention him. But yeah, definitely Fugazi is where they're falling into.
All right. Your Eastern Conference Finals opponent, Indiana Pacers, Freelo Fugazi.
This one hurts. I'm going Fugazi, and I think, as much as people want to say the Celtics got a bunch of injury luck, the Pacers are probably the real team.
Oh my God! Don't get me started about the Pacers. Do not.
Right. This is a Knicks game. This, right. Exactly. Like they weren't. There's zero chance. If even Jalen Brunson didn't get hurt in Game 7, like there's a chance they don't get out of that series.
Give me a break. They should have got all the Milwaukee series. I'm being honest with you. I mean, they were hurt too.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. So and the Pacers are good. Like, honestly, I mean, Joe Mazzulla said this in media day. That was our toughest series. He said the Pacers were our toughest series, and the Pacers played us incredibly close. All of those games except for I think it was Game 2. Were tight, right? Like Jaylen Brown hit basically a buzzer beater to send it to overtime in Game 1. Game 3 was like a 20-something point comeback. That Jayson Tatum wraparound pass around the back to Al Horford's kind of the signature play. And then Game 4 came down to Derek White and Drew Holiday making big plays on the defensive end. Like the Pacers are a legit playoff team, but as far as dethroning the Celtics and getting by them, that's where I can't quite get there with them.
All right, the Philadelphia 76ers, Freelo Fugazi.
Unfortunately, I'm going to say real. And I don't even fully believe this, but there's two teams. I'm sure we'll talk about the other one that I think could actually, if things break correctly, could give the C's a threat and could beat the C's. And the Sixers have to be respected as one of them. Although I have never been more out on Joel Embiid in my entire life as a Knicks fan. I don't know how you don't puke at the name of that. Like I still think to this day, the bullshit he pulled with Mitchell Robinson. Like I didn't viscerally. Just as someone who plays basketball, who still plays in a men's league and tries to, avoid getting injured, that made me more mad than anything I've ever seen in the court that had nothing to do with my team. Like I was so mad, and I had to I was walking around my house, I was fuming because I was like, how can you do that to another human being like in a basketball game? And then I think he got off kind of easy for that. If I'm being 100%,
he got technical. It was like a flagrant foul.
But I'm talking about even the media afterwards.
1,000%. There was no calls for suspensions. No one gave a damn. It was just kind of it was a little dirty, and that was it.
Yeah, how did more people not have the Nick Wright, Stephen A. Smith diatribes of how amazingly bullshit this was, and now it's just kind of glossed over. So I'm a big kind of FMB type now. But once again, it's going to be if he stays healthy, Paul George, if he stays healthy. And then, I respect the hell out of Tyrese Maxey. I think Tyrese Maxey is a true baller. So, so I will give them a little bit of respect and say they're for real.
Tyrese Maxey is the only 76er I respect right now. And I'm not even trying to be funny. After that series, he's the only one I even Nick Nurse, the way he was talking, I was like, shut up. You guys, I hate y'all now. I used to not care about them. And I'll be honest with you, I joke around saying how much I hate Boston sports, but to be honest with you, the Celtics are a team that never really bothered me. I don't have any hate.
Well, it's like a New York Boston thing. It's not necessarily the Knicks. It's more like a New York Boston thing. I think honestly, for me, growing up in Boston, it relates more back to Sox Yankees because that's where there was real hate. Growing up, now as an adult, it feels a little ridiculous. But it would be if you were walking around Boston, you saw somebody with a Yankees hat. That was basically fight. That was a throw them up on the spot type.
I almost got Kwab killed in Boston one time. It was a good time.
Yes, he almost got me killed in Boston. Because he's a Yankees fan.
I almost got
right. Honestly, it was probably somewhat mentally unhealthy for that to be the case, but it was fun. It was good. It was fun environment. I always wanted to go when I was a kid. I was like, I got to go to Yankee Stadium, old Yankee Stadium, and be a Red Sox fan there. I got to see what it's like. Now there's new Yankee Stadium. I feel like I've heard it's just not the same. And also as an adult, as I get older, it's just I can't imagine getting into it that same way. But that's where the Boston, New York thing is, and I'm with you with Philly, the 76ers. I definitely dislike the 76ers more than I dislike the Knicks. And a lot of that has come on just over the Joel Embiid nonsense over the last couple of years.
Yeah, same. All right, two more teams. One, the Miami Heat, Furilo Fugazi.
We're done with the Heat. We're done with them, man.
So he's saying for the Celtics. I'm not Heat culture when it comes to the Knicks is a completely different story, my boy.
Kwab just tortures me about the Heat. He's insistent that the Heat can go to the Eastern
Conference. You think the Heat got one last run left in them?
If they meet the Knicks, yes. I'm just gonna. that might be me trolling. That might be when somebody believes in astrology, it's just they just believe because of the sign, it's meant to be. That's what it comes. That's Heat culture with me.
I mean, now they got Cat out there. What's the Jimmy Butler quote about him? Soft as baby shit. I think that's what he called him.
Yeah.
I could 100. Yeah. Jimmy would get in Cat's head so quickly in a series that I might give that a little bit of validation.
Not against the Celtics. Not against the Celtics. No chance.
Yeah, no. Listen, we've had the Heat be the Grim Reaper over the last couple years. Last year, I mean, they were injured. I'm not gonna sit here and act like that was what did it. What did it is the fact that they haven't really made any substantial upgrades. Jimmy's getting older. Jimmy's banged up. Bam's awesome. I even like some of their young guys. I think Jovic and Jaquez are really interesting players. But if you're rolling out with Terry Rozier and Tyler Hero, we're just going to abuse you. That's just how it's going to go. We can stop that, and then we can abuse you with them on the other end. So I just don't see the path for it. The Heat are still. I mean, they're going to be a play-in team, and they're a real team. They're not one of these play-in teams that went 36-46. They're going to be a real 44 win team or something. But they ain't coming for the crown.
All right, last team, New York Knicks, Furilo Fugazi.
All right, man. I know we were kind of building up to this. This is This is the dramatic conclusion here. But yeah, I think the Knicks are real. Knicks are real. I'm interested to get your thoughts here in a second on the Cat trade.
Yeah.
I think for me, the Cat trade is such a gamble, and it's interesting to hear everybody's position on it. I think in the short term, the Knicks are better. Long term, I think that's a question mark. But I think in the short term, the ceiling for the Knicks is definitively higher. I was kind of working up a take where I thought with the Mitchell Robinson injury before the Cat trade that it was kind of a blessing in disguise, because what it was going to do is make Tibbs have to play that 5-man unit of Randall at the 5. And you're going to get a chance to see what that looks like. And I think that was going to be important to see what was going to need to be, what was real for it. Could it work? Could it not work? Because that was a 5-out system that was kind of a fake 5-out system, because Julius Randle, aside from that 1 year where he shot 41%, is like a 34% three-point shooter. Right now, you switch that with Cat, who, is he the best big man shooter of all time? He thinks he is. I'm not. He's in the conversation at the very least, but he probably is in the NBA today, right? And so that's a massive difference. So I think Cat can have a KP-like influence on the Knicks offense as far as what he does for their spacing, and you combine him with Brunson in that pick and roll. My questions end up being defensively. We saw he was not really an anchor of a defense. Now, granted, the Knicks have a good infrastructure of Josh Hart, OG Anunoby, and Mikal Bridges, who can all guard up and down, across there from their opponents, in different ways that will help protect against that. But still don't love Cat as your main big man. Now, obviously, if you bring Mitchell Robinson in, that gives you some versatility. But I'm also just not a fan of Cat. Like, I don't think his mental. I think his mental is ready to be broken in half in New York. Yeah. Like, I think there couldn't be a worse fit mentally for New York, because he ain't gonna get away with any of the ridiculous stuff that he says. And when he commits these just egregious fouls, when he fouls out in 18 minutes and goes 2 of 14 from the field, he's going to get killed. He's going to get murdered. He's not living in Minnesota anymore. And so the spotlight's going to be that much bigger, and he's going to have that many more opportunities to say some dumb stuff that's going to come back to haunt him. And I don't know. He feels like a guy that when he's tried to put on this tough guy Cat act or put on leadership Cat, it all just feels forced. And that forced and phoniness doesn't play in New York. That's part of what makes Brunson the king of New York right now, is how authentic and real he is. And so I think there's a powder keg waiting to happen with Karl-Anthony Towns. But from a talent perspective, that starting 5 is very, very legit. And I understand the ceiling to it, but I do think you've added a bit more volatility to it than what you would have had just running it with the Nova guys plus Randall. Let's see what it looks like and then assess. So it's a big swing that I don't think necessarily needed to happen, but who knows what the trade talks were and if someone else is going to come get Cat. And that's apparently, I saw Shams talking, this has been a target of the Knicks now for several months. So
years.
Yeah, I mean, so we'll see. Like I said, ceiling's higher, but I think it's a lot more of a volatile fit than what you had a week ago. What were you thinking about it?
I agree with you with the ceiling being higher. For me, the Knicks, and this is what I'll say about this, is not a knock on the Celtics, but my head about the Celtics is what I liked about the Knicks was like, hey, we can beat you up, we can crash the glass, like we can outwork you, we can out hustle, we can do certain things that I saw the Miami Heat do to the Celtics over the years. You know what I mean? So that was my thought process with the Knicks, where it's like, hey, if we're gonna get him, we're gonna get him this way. And now, Hartenstein's gone. Julius is gone. Dante's gone. Like, I think the Knicks are losing a little bit of that identity, and it's making me a little nervous, because that's what I thought made the Knicks so good, if I'm being honest.
Well, here's the thing, man, because like one of the things that I think benefits the Celtics, which without us saying directly, you guys have alluded to, continuity. It's a forgotten asset, I think, in the NBA is continuity. And that was something that I think, especially when you're plugging in Mikal Bridges, who's roommates with like 3 of these guys, like that's, you know what I mean? Like that's something that is to your benefit, right? And now you're disrupting that. You got to figure it out again on the fly. And that's where I think the Celtics, the Thunder, even the Nuggets, where they're keeping their core 4 and they've kind of built within, like, I still think those are the 3 teams I look at. Like, those are the 3 best championship odds right now, in my opinion. Right. Those are the 3 teams where I think the championship is coming out of, and all of them have continuity. And I still think the Knicks are probably the 4th best team I might look at in the NBA. I think I'd still put them there, especially with them dropping the Wolves down, because I don't like the Randall fit for them at all. And, but like I said, the ceiling's there, but there's a lot of volatility that I think's got to be worked out, and it's gonna be interesting. New York's an interesting place to try to figure that out.
Yeah, and it makes me nervous as a Knicks fan because last year when we had you actually said this last year on the podcast, like building around the edges, right? The core is there, the meat is there, just kind of build around the edges. And the Knicks, a couple times now, you're taking out the core and you're still trying to build around the edge at the same time. And Leon has done it well. But it gets to a point where it's like, right, how maybe you're working it too much a little bit because the Knicks, this team had chemistry, this team had an identity, and now you're switching it up again. I don't know. It just makes me nervous as a Knicks fan. Obviously, I don't think they're better than the Celtics right now. I'd have to like watch 50, 60 games into the season to know what I even think about the Knicks playoff chances.
Right.
But as a Knicks fan going through the season, I wouldn't say I'm excited. I'm just more like curious, and I don't like it. I'd rather be excited. So
right. I think, and that's the thing. I have Knicks fans in my life too, where it's like
Yeah.
I understand Cat's talented. I don't know how to feel about him, and
yeah,
I mean, it's going to be a hell of an experience seeing what that looks like.
Yeah. All right, let's get you out of here. I know you got to go. Just really quick, season prediction and where everybody can find you on social media and your podcast. Shout it out.
So we're just gonna put that here. That will be the prediction, running it back to back. I mean, listen, like a lot can happen, but if this team's healthy, stack them up. I don't care who else is out there. I mean, like I said, I think OKC and Denver are the two biggest threats, and they play in the West. I think the Knicks, Sixers, kind of in that next category. But it's yeah. I think if the Celtics are healthy, there's no reason at this point to think that they wouldn't run it back, or at the very least, they're going to have an opportunity to run it back by making it to the finals. So if you want to see if I'm right, you want to see if I'm Fugazi, or you want to see if I'm for real, come check us out. Green with Envy podcast. Green with Envy. Catch us on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to podcasts. YouTube, we do stream all of our episodes onto our YouTube page, and then at Green Envy Pod. I do have my own Twitter account, but I mostly just tweet from our show account. So at Green Envy Pod is where you can find me and my co-host Greg Manakis. Come check us out if you want some Celtics content.
All right, if you guys want to follow Dime, you can on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads at the Dime NBA. I'm Josh Rodriguez at Josh_Rodriguez_. He's Kwab at Kwab, aka yes. We'll see you next time for another episode of Dime.